Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to comment where you're watching from today. What you're about to witness is a tale of destiny, memory, and the power of coming full circle. On a quiet Tuesday morning in Los Angeles, while most of the city was still waking up, Magic Johnson sat in his car, staring at an address he hadn't visited in over 4 decades. The once bustling neighborhood had changed dramatically, with abandoned buildings standing as silent witnesses to the passage of time. But one structure, in particular, caught his attention, an old gymnasium that held more memories than its weathered exterior suggested. As Magic stepped out of his car, Jennifer Clark, a local resident walking her dog, did a double-take. She'd heard stories about this place from her grandfather, William Martin, who used to work as a janitor in the area during the 1970s. The gym had once been a beacon of hope for young athletes, a place where dreams took flight under the guidance of Thomas More, a legendary youth basketball coach who had shaped countless lives. The morning sun cast long shadows through the building's broken windows as Magic approached the entrance. The door, heavy with rust and memories, creaked open with surprising ease. Inside, dust particles danced in the streams of light that managed to pierce through the grimy windows. The wooden floor, though warped and worn, still bore the faint markings of a basketball court where countless young players had once honed their skills. Sandra Williams, who owned the small convenience store across the street, watched with curiosity as the basketball legend disappeared into the building. She remembered her mother, Barbara Garcia, telling stories about the golden days when this gym was the heart of the community. Back then, Michael Thompson ran the local youth program, working tirelessly to keep kids off the streets and on the court. As Magic's eyes adjusted to the dim light, memories flooded back. This wasn't just any gym. This was where Richard Anderson, his first serious coach, had spotted his potential. Anderson had worked alongside Joseph Robinson, creating a safe haven for young athletes who dreamed of something bigger than their circumstances. The smell of old wood and distant echoes of squeaking sneakers transported Magic back to those crucial early days. Moving deeper into the building, Magic noticed something peculiar. Despite the years of abandonment, certain areas seemed preserved, as if protected by an invisible force. The far corner, where Coach Daniel Taylor used to set up the shooting drills, still had its original floorboards. Patricia Harris, the daughter of the gym's founder, had fought for years to prevent the building's demolition, insisting it held too much history to be destroyed. The basketball legend ran his hand along the wall, feeling the texture of memories beneath his fingers. This was where Charles Rodriguez, the maintenance man with a heart of gold, would post inspirational quotes every Monday morning. Rodriguez, who had played semi-professional basketball in his youth, understood the power of words to motivate young athletes. As Magic approached the old office area, he remembered Margaret Moore, the program coordinator who kept everything running smoothly. She had an uncanny ability to remember every kid's name, their favorite position on the court, and their dreams for the future. Her small desk by the entrance had been command central for the gym's operations, a hub of activity and encouragement. The sound of Magic's footsteps echoed through the empty space, each step stirring up both dust and memories. He remembered Sarah Davis, a talented point guard who trained here alongside him, pushing him to be better every single day. Davis went on to become one of the first female coaches in the local high school league, breaking barriers and inspiring a new generation. Near the old water fountain, now dry and rusted, Magic paused. This was where he'd met Robert Harris, a retired professional player who would often stop by to mentor young athletes. Harris had a saying that stuck with Magic throughout his career: "Champions are made when no one's watching." The words seemed particularly poignant now, in this abandoned temple of basketball dreams. The morning light shifted, illuminating a section of the wall that had previously been in shadow. Magic's breath caught in his throat as he noticed something unusual, a faded area that seemed different from its surroundings. As he moved closer, his heart began to race. There, partially hidden behind years of dust and neglect, was something that would change everything. But before Magic could investigate further, he heard footsteps behind him. Linda Gonzalez, the current property manager, had noticed the door was open and came to investigate. She stopped short when she recognized the NBA legend standing in her building. The surprise on her face quickly turned to understanding as she realized why he was there. "Mr. Johnson," she said softly, "I wondered if you'd ever come back here." Gonzalez explained that her father, Anthony Jones, had been one of the weekend security guards during the gym's heyday. He had often spoken about the magical atmosphere that filled this place, especially during those early morning practice sessions when young Magic would arrive before sunrise. Magic shared with Gonzalez how Elizabeth Martinez, his mother's best friend, used to drop him off at 5 a.m., 3 hours before school started. He would practice his dribbling in the dim light, the sound of the ball echoing through the empty gym. Sometimes, Karen Wilson, the elderly woman who lived next door, would bring him breakfast, worried that he was working too hard on an empty stomach. As they talked, Magic's eyes kept drifting back to that mysterious spot on the wall. Gonzalez noticed his distraction and smiled knowingly. "You're not the first one to notice that," she said. "Matthew Robinson, the old coach's son, used to say there was something special hidden in these walls. Most people thought he was just being sentimental." The story of this gym had always been intertwined with the community's history. Susan Thompson, the local historian, had documented how this building had served as more than just a sports facility. During tough times, it became a shelter, a meeting place, and a symbol of hope. David Smith, the architect who designed it, had specifically created spaces that could serve multiple purposes, understanding that a community needs more than just a place to play basketball. Magic moved closer to the wall, his heart pounding with anticipation. The years seemed to fall away as he remembered Nancy White, the tough-as-nails referee who officiated their weekend games. She always said that the true character of a player shows up in the details, how they handle both victory and defeat, how they treat their teammates, how they respect the game. As Magic reached out to touch the wall, the morning sun broke through a high window, illuminating the spot perfectly. There, beneath decades of dust and memories, was a hidden message that would connect past and present in an unexpected way. But that revelation and its profound impact on both Magic and the community would have to wait for our next chapter. What hidden message did Magic Johnson discover on that gym wall? How would this finding connect to his past and potentially shape the future of this forgotten place? Share your theories in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to catch the next part of this extraordinary story. As the morning sun illuminated the mysterious spot on the wall, Magic Johnson and Linda Gonzalez stood in reverent silence. Years of dust and peeling paint had nearly obscured what lay beneath, but there was something unmistakably deliberate about this particular section. As Magic reached out to gently brush away the decades of accumulated grime, his fingers revealed something that made his heart skip a beat. Lisa Miller, who had arrived to help Gonzalez with the property inspection, watched from the doorway as the basketball legend carefully cleared away more of the wall's surface. What emerged was a carefully preserved collection of measurements and dates, each marking the height of different players who had trained here. But these weren't just any measurements, they were a historical record of dreams, aspirations, and the physical growth of young athletes who had once called this gym home. Among the markings, Magic found his own name and heights, carefully recorded by Mark Wilson, the gym's dedicated statistician who had kept meticulous records of every player's progress. But it was what surrounded these measurements that truly caught his attention. Written in the distinctive handwriting of Christopher Brown, his first basketball mentor, were detailed notes about each player's strengths, weaknesses, and potential. Sandra Johnson, who had joined the small group gathering in the gym, gasped when she recognized her father's handwriting among the notes. James Thompson had been one of the volunteer coaches here, working alongside Brown to develop young talent. His observations about Magic's early playing style were still clearly visible. Shows exceptional court vision. Natural leader. Remember this name. The wall had become a time capsule, preserving not just physical measurements but the hopes, dreams, and insights of an entire generation of coaches and players. William Moore, the gym's last active coach before its closure, had continued the tradition until the final day, adding his own observations about the young athletes who trained here. As Magic studied the wall more closely, he noticed something else, a pattern of small stars next to certain names. Betty Jackson, who had served as the gym's secretary for over 2 decades, used to mark the names of players who showed exceptional character both on and off the court. Magic's name had 3 stars beside it, each representing a different aspect of leadership that the coaches had recognized in him. The discovery brought back memories of Robert Taylor, a talented point guard who trained alongside Magic. Taylor's measurements showed his remarkable growth spurt during high school, but it was the accompanying note that touched Magic's heart, helped younger players with homework before practice. True leader. Taylor had gone on to become a respected high school principal, proving that the lessons learned in this gym extended far beyond basketball. Michael Davis, a local photographer who had heard about Magic's visit, arrived with his camera to document the discovery. As he captured images of the wall, more details emerged. There were quotes written in the margins, words of wisdom from Nancy Thomas, the gym's unofficial philosopher and one of the first female coaches in the area. Her favorite saying was still visible: "Growth isn't just measured in inches, it's measured in heart." The wall revealed another layer of history when Magic noticed a series of dates and initials near the bottom. Barbara Williams, whose mother had been the gym's bookkeeper, explained that these marked significant achievements of former players, college acceptances, scholarships, and professional signings. Each set of initials told a story of success, both in sports and in life. Jennifer Thompson, a local historian who had been documenting the neighborhood's transformation, arrived breathless with excitement. She explained how this discovery could help save the building from its scheduled demolition. The wall wasn't just a collection of measurements, it was a historical record of community achievement and aspiration. As word spread about the discovery, more people began arriving at the gym. Charles Anderson, whose father's name appeared multiple times on the wall as a coaching assistant, brought old photographs that matched many of the dates and measurements recorded. Each image showed young athletes standing proudly against this very wall, their heights being measured, their progress being celebrated. The revelation took on even deeper meaning when Sarah Wilson, a former player who had become a sports psychologist, pointed out the psychological impact of this ritual. The wall hadn't just tracked physical growth, it had given young athletes a tangible way to see their progress, to believe in their potential, to understand that they were part of something bigger than themselves. Magic was particularly moved when he found the name of Joseph Martinez, a teammate who had faced numerous challenges but never gave up. Martinez's measurements showed irregular progress, but the notes beside them told a story of perseverance. Comes early, stays late. Works harder than anyone. This is what champions are made of. Martinez had later become a youth mentor, helping other young athletes overcome their own obstacles. Karen Thomas, who had recently purchased the building next door, listened intently as Magic shared stories about each name and measurement. She began to understand why Patricia Perez, the community activist, had fought so hard to preserve this building. It wasn't just a gym, it was a repository of dreams, a testament to the power of mentorship and community. As the morning wore on, more details emerged from the wall's surface. David Williams, an architectural preservationist, noticed that some of the earliest measurements dated back to the 1960s, making this an invaluable record of community sports history. The wall had survived multiple renovations, protected perhaps by its seemingly mundane appearance to those who didn't understand its significance. Margaret Davis, whose grandfather's name appeared as one of the original coaches, shared stories she had heard about the early days of the gym. The tradition of recording measurements had started as a simple way to track players' physical development, but it had evolved into something much more meaningful, a way to document the growth of character, determination, and leadership. The wall also revealed some surprising connections. Elizabeth White's name appeared both as a player and later as a coach, showing how the gym had fostered a cycle of mentorship. Her measurements stopped in high school, but her impact continued through the notes she later added about her own players, creating a legacy of leadership that spanned generations. Richard Jones, a former NBA scout who had discovered several players from this gym, arrived to see the wall for himself. He was amazed to find his own early notes about promising young athletes, including one about Magic that read, "Not just talented, understands the game at a deeper level. Born to inspire." The discovery of this historical record led to an immediate discussion about preservation. Sandra Martinez, an expert in historical renovation, began documenting every detail of the wall, understanding its importance not just to sports history but to the story of the community itself. Each measurement, each note, each star represented a moment of hope, a step toward a dream, a recognition of potential. As the afternoon approached, the gym had become a gathering place once again. Lisa Perez, who ran the local youth center, brought some of her young basketball players to see the wall. Watching their faces light up as Magic shared stories about each name and measurement, it became clear that this discovery could bridge the gap between past and future, inspiring a new generation of athletes. But there was still more to this wall than met the eye. As Magic studied the measurements more closely, he noticed something that made him pause, a pattern that suggested this wasn't just a random collection of markings. There was a method, a message, a purpose that went beyond simple record-keeping. This realization would lead to an even more remarkable discovery, but that's a story for our next chapter. Don't forget to like and subscribe to catch the next part of this incredible journey. What do you think the patterns on the wall might reveal? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know if your community has a special place like this gym, where dreams and memories are preserved in unexpected ways. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the gym's dusty windows, Magic Johnson stood before the wall of measurements, his eyes fixed on a pattern that was slowly emerging from the decades of recorded data. Thomas Clark, a mathematics teacher from the local high school, had noticed it first. The measurements weren't just chronological growth records, they told a deeper story about the methodology behind the gym's legendary training program. William Anderson, one of the original coaches who had recently returned to the neighborhood, explained how Robert Harris had developed a unique system for predicting and developing player potential. The measurements weren't just heights, they included wingspans, vertical jumps, and speed tests, all carefully disguised as simple height markings to anyone who didn't know the code. Sandra Smith, whose father had been Harris's coaching partner, pulled out an old notebook from her bag. She had inherited her father's papers, and among them was a key to decoding the wall's markings. Each measurement was part of a comprehensive player development system that was decades ahead of its time. The seemingly random stars and dots next to names were actually performance indicators, mapping out each player's progress in different aspects of the game. As Magic studied the decoded information, memories flooded back of how Michael Lewis, the gym's conditioning coach, would take these measurements and create personalized training programs. What had seemed like standard drills were actually precisely calibrated exercises designed to develop specific skills based on each player's unique physical attributes and playing style. Nancy Anderson, a sports statistician who had heard about the discovery, arrived with her laptop to help analyze the patterns. She pointed out how the measurement system predicted growth spurts and physical development with remarkable accuracy. The coaches had been using advanced biomechanics principles before they were common in professional sports. The revelation brought new meaning to Magic's own measurements on the wall. Karen Davis, who had trained alongside him, remembered how the coaches would adjust their training routines based on these regular measurements. What they had thought was just motivation to grow taller was actually a sophisticated development program disguised as simple height tracking. James Martinez, a former player who became a sports medicine specialist, examined the patterns with professional interest. He noticed that the measurement system also included subtle indicators for injury prevention, showing how the coaches modified training intensities based on each player's physical development stages. The wall's code revealed another layer when Jennifer Lee, a computer scientist specializing in pattern recognition, noticed a correlation between the measurements and the gym's famous wall ball drills. These exercises, which everyone had assumed were standard basketball drills, were actually customized based on each player's measurements to optimize their natural playing style. David Taylor, whose grandfather had helped build the gym, brought in old blueprints of the building. They discovered that even the court's unique dimensions had been deliberately designed to complement the training system. The slightly longer baseline created specific training zones that matched the measurement patterns on the wall. As word spread about the sophisticated system hidden in these simple markings, more former players arrived to share their stories. Sarah Brown remembered how Linda Robinson, the assistant coach, would always insist on proper form during drills. Now it became clear that these form corrections were based on the detailed physical data tracked on the wall. Barbara Lopez, who had become a physical therapist, explained how the measurement system had unknowingly influenced her approach to sports medicine. The patterns revealed an understanding of biomechanics that was revolutionary for its time, focusing on natural movement patterns and individual physical development. The afternoon took an even more interesting turn when Charles Thompson, a current NBA development coach, recognized elements of modern training methods in the old system. The wall had essentially documented the evolution of basketball training methodology, preserved in a simple code of heights and dates. Margaret Martin, whose mother had been the gym's medic, found her parents' old logbook. The injury records corresponded perfectly with the wall's marking system, showing how the coaches adjusted training intensities based on player development stages. This holistic approach to player development had been decades ahead of its time. Magic was particularly moved when he found his own training progression mapped out on the wall. Elizabeth Garcia, who had worked alongside the coaches, explained how they had used his measurements to create the training program that helped develop his unique playing style. The system had recognized and nurtured his natural abilities as a tall point guard, rather than trying to force him into a traditional big man's role. As they continued to decode the wall's secrets, Joseph White, a sports historian, documented everything meticulously. He recognized that this discovery could revolutionize understanding of basketball development history. The gym had been more than a training facility, it had been an unrecognized laboratory for advanced sports science. The pattern analysis revealed something else, a prediction system for player potential. Anthony Thomas, who had played professionally in Europe, found his old measurements and noticed how accurately the system had predicted his playing style and career path. The coaches had used this information to guide players toward positions and playing styles that would best suit their physical development. Patricia Anderson, now a high school basketball coach herself, was amazed by how many modern training principles were embedded in the old measurement system. The wall had preserved a comprehensive player development philosophy that bridged fundamental skills with advanced sports science. Mark Perez, whose father had been one of the gym's last coaches, found a collection of old practice plans. When compared with the wall's measurement system, they showed how each drill was precisely calibrated to different player types, creating a personalized development program disguised as group training. The revelations continued as Sandra Lee, a physical education researcher, identified patterns that corresponded with current understanding of motor skill development. The coaches had intuitively developed a system that science would later prove to be optimal for athletic development. Daniel Harris, a young basketball coach from the community center, listened intently as Magic explained how the training system had shaped his development. The wall wasn't just a historical record, it was a preserved blueprint for player development that could still be relevant today. Betty Martinez, whose grandmother had helped maintain the gym, remembered how the coaches would often stand by the wall in deep discussion. What had seemed like casual conversations were actually detailed analysis sessions, using the coded measurements to adjust training programs and develop player potential. The afternoon's discoveries had transformed understanding of the gym's legacy. Richard Wilson, a sports documentary filmmaker who had arrived to document the findings, realized that this wasn't just a local story, it was a significant piece of basketball history that had been hidden in plain sight for decades. As Magic studied the patterns one more time, he noticed something else, a series of numbers that didn't quite fit the measurement system. Nancy Jones, who had worked as the gym's bookkeeper, recognized them immediately. These numbers weren't measurements at all, they were dates, coordinates, and what appeared to be a kind of key to something else entirely. This discovery would lead them to an even more remarkable revelation about the gym's history and its impact on basketball development. But that story and its powerful implications for the future of this historic building would have to wait for our next chapter. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to catch the next part of this amazing story. What do you think these mysterious numbers might reveal? Share your theories in the comments below, and let us know if your local gym has any hidden history waiting to be discovered. As the late afternoon sun painted the gym's worn floorboards in amber hues, Magic Johnson and the gathered crowd focused on the mysterious numbers that didn't fit the measurement system. Christopher Anderson, a retired architect who specialized in historical buildings, was the first to recognize their significance. These weren't just random numbers. They were coordinates to specific locations within the gym itself. Sandra Taylor, who had been documenting everything on her tablet, quickly plotted the numbers on the original building plans. They formed a pattern that led to various points throughout the facility. Matthew Lopez, whose grandfather had helped renovate the gym in the 1970s, remembered stories about hidden compartments built into the walls during the renovation, designated spaces meant to preserve important documents and memorabilia. Following the first set of coordinates led them to a loose floorboard near the old free throw line. William Robinson, who had maintained the gym's floors for decades, helped carefully remove the board. Inside, they found a weatherproof container holding a collection of documents that left Magic speechless: original training plans, coaching philosophies, and handwritten notes from some of basketball's greatest minds who had visited this humble gym. Lisa Clark, a sports journalist who had arrived to cover the story, began carefully photographing each document. Among them was a detailed training program created by Joseph Thompson, one of the original coaches, outlining a revolutionary approach to player development that had been decades ahead of its time. The program seamlessly integrated the wall's measurement system with progressive training techniques that were only now becoming standard in professional basketball. The second set of coordinates led them to a panel behind the old scoreboard. Michael Harris, an electrical engineer who had heard about the discovery, helped them safely access the space. Inside, they found hundreds of photographs documenting the gym's golden era, including images of young players who would later become NBA legends. Each photo was carefully labeled with dates that corresponded to the measurements on the wall. Elizabeth Wilson, whose mother had been the gym's photographer, recognized many of the faces in these historical images. She pointed out how the photos showed the progression of players through the training system, documenting not just their physical growth but their development as athletes and leaders. The images told a story of transformation, both personal and communal. As they continued following the coordinates, Margaret Brown, a local historian, made an interesting observation. The hidden locations formed a perfect circle around the court, suggesting a deliberate pattern. David Gonzalez, who coached at the community center, realized that these points corresponded with the traditional stations of the gym's famous Circle of Excellence training drill. The next location revealed something extraordinary. Behind a loose brick in the east wall, they found a leather-bound journal belonging to Nancy Miller, the gym's first female coach. Her detailed observations about player development and team dynamics read like a masterclass in basketball psychology. Magic remembered her as a quiet but powerful presence who seemed to understand each player's potential before they did themselves. Richard Thomas, a sports psychologist, was particularly intrigued by Miller's notes on mental preparation and character development. The journal revealed how the gym's training philosophy went far beyond basketball skills, focusing on building complete individuals who would succeed both on and off the court. The discovery sparked memories for Barbara Anderson, who had worked as a counselor in the neighborhood. She recalled how the gym had served as more than just a sports facility. It was a sanctuary where young people could find mentorship, guidance, and a sense of belonging. The hidden documents proved that this holistic approach had been intentionally designed into the program from the beginning. Jennifer Martinez, who ran a youth development program, found inspiration in the detailed community outreach plans preserved in these time capsules. The gym's founders had created a comprehensive system for connecting with families, local schools, and businesses, creating a support network that helped players succeed beyond sports. As they followed more coordinates, Sarah Rodriguez uncovered financial records that told another powerful story. The gym had operated a secret scholarship fund, helping dozens of players attend college. Karen Thompson, whose father had received one of these scholarships, finally understood how her family had managed to afford her father's education. The next location held something that brought tears to Magic's eyes, a collection of letters from former players, each describing how the gym had changed their lives. Thomas Moore, now a successful business owner, found his own letter from 30 years ago, describing his dreams and thanking the coaches for believing in him when nobody else did. Linda Williams, a community organizer, began to see how these discoveries could impact the neighborhood's future. The gym wasn't just a historical landmark, it was a blueprint for community transformation through sports, mentorship, and education. The hidden documents provided a roadmap for recreating this success in modern contexts. As the day progressed, more coordinates led to more revelations. Anthony Lee, a structural engineer, found architectural plans for similar gyms that were never built, showing how the founders had hoped to expand their program to other communities. These plans included innovations in sports facility design that were decades ahead of their time. Patricia Wilson discovered records of late-night coaching sessions and early morning practices that revealed the extraordinary dedication of both coaches and players. Daniel Smith, who had trained here as a teenager, remembered how the gym never really closed. There was always someone willing to open the doors for a kid who wanted to work on their game. The final set of coordinates led them to the most significant discovery of all. Hidden behind a panel in the office wall, they found a sealed envelope addressed to future generations. Inside was a letter written by Robert Davis, the gym's founding coach, explaining the true purpose behind everything: the measurements, the training system, the hidden documents, and most importantly, the philosophy that guided it all. Sandra Hernandez, a teacher at the local school, read the letter aloud to the gathered crowd. Davis's words echoed through the empty gym, speaking across decades about the power of sports to transform lives, the importance of building character alongside skill, and the responsibility of each generation to lift up the next. Magic listened intently, understanding now why this gym had been so special. It wasn't just about creating better basketball players, it was about building better people. The sophisticated training systems, the hidden documents, the careful measurements had all been tools in service of a greater purpose, giving young people the confidence, skills, and support they needed to succeed in life. Charles White, a city council member who had been skeptical about preserving the building, now saw its true value. This wasn't just an abandoned gym, it was a treasure trove of social innovation, a testament to the power of community investment in youth development, and a model that could inform future programs. Mark Johnson, who worked in sports facility development, immediately began drafting plans for how the gym could be restored and updated while preserving its historical significance. The hidden documents provided a perfect blueprint for combining traditional wisdom with modern training methods. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the court, Magic gathered everyone together. He shared his vision for the gym's future, not just as a restored historical site, but as a living laboratory where the best of the past could guide new generations. The measurement wall would remain, joining old wisdom with new science, continuing its role in developing young athletes and leaders. Betty Thompson, who ran a local youth foundation, immediately pledged support for the renovation project. Others quickly followed, inspired by the day's discoveries and the potential they represented. The gym that had launched so many dreams would soon help launch many more. The story of Magic Johnson's return to his old gym had become something much bigger, a rediscovery of a hidden chapter in basketball history, a blueprint for community transformation, and a bridge between past and future. The measurements on the wall, the hidden documents, and the carefully preserved wisdom of dedicated coaches had created a legacy that would continue to shape lives for generations to come. Don't forget to like and subscribe to be part of this ongoing story of transformation and renewal. How has a special place in your community shaped your life? Share your stories in the comments below, and let us know how you think this gym's legacy could inspire similar projects in your neighborhood.